Hello and welcome to Conditionals practice using CodingBat. CodingBat is a website developed by a Stanford professor and is an excellent way to get a lot of practice and get feedback on it and let you know if it's right. But it's all using methods, which let's take a look at right now. So first question we're going to do is called sleep in. Basically, we're starting our method, our own little command, with the word public, which means any class can access it. Not important to you right now. Its return type is Boolean, which means you're going to need a line that says return, and what comes after it has to be true or false, or some little Boolean math that evaluates to true or false, like equals equals or greater than or less than, whatever. The function is called sleep in. So if you want to use it, like it's being used right here, you'd use its name. And to do its job, it needs two bits of information. It needs something true or false, whether it's a weekday or not, and another true or false, another Boolean that tells you whether you're on vacation or not. So let's see if we can figure this out. So we've got this function and it's just supposed to return true if you get a sleep in, like if you're on vacation or it's not a weekday, and else you want to return false. You don't get a sleep in if you're not on vacation and it is a weekday. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to do a long way first and then kind of like make it shorter. So we could say, hey, if we're on vacation, we could do vacation equals true, because vacation will be either true or false depending on what they type in. So in this case, this is saying, hey, in this example, they're using the sleep in function with it's not a weekday and they're not on vacation. It's true. It returns true because you do get a sleep in if it's not a weekday. And this first guy, this false, becomes weekday. So wherever you see weekday, that's going to be equal to false. Anyway, so if vacation is true, we want to return true because we get a sleep in. And we want this whole thing to equal true if we get a sleep in. We could also say else if, or just if, it doesn't really matter. By the way, as soon as you hit a return statement, nothing else will execute. It will not keep moving through your function. That function is just done as soon as you hit a return. So otherwise, if it is, let's say weekday equals false, we also want to return true. And otherwise, we want to return false. By the way, with these functions that return something, no matter what path you take through if, else, it must return something, and it can't always tell if you've hit all the possibilities. So you do have to be pretty explicit about it all. As long as you've got an else, you're covered. By the way, we could get rid of this else and that would also work because the only way we can possibly there, by the way, here's my dog Lila and my lovely daughter. You are now immortalized with YouTube fame. As I was saying, you can get rid of the else because the only way you can possibly hit this return false is if you didn't manage to hit either of these return trues. So it's entirely equivalent. The only way you hit this point is if both of these conditions were false. So we could do that if we wanted. That's a nice little shortcut sometimes. Another thing we could do is we could check if vacation equals true. Vacation is true or false on its own. So we're checking really that true equals true or false equals true. But vacation is true or false on its own. So we can really just do if vacation. So vacation, the variable, is equal to true, this executes. If vacation, the variable, equals false, this doesn't. So we don't really need to check that it's equal to true. It's kind of redundant. We can also shorten this up because It works like this, and feel free to keep it that way if it makes more logical sense to you. But we can also use our not operator. So this is kind of same deal. If we throw a not in front of it, then if weekdays equal to false, this flips it to true, and we've got if true, and then this will execute. Or if weekday is true, this flips it, and then it says if false, return true, which works great too. So we're pretty good there. This is already looking much shorter. Well, we can do better. We can use our logical operators. We can use and. So we could go copy and paste this guy, throw it in here with an and all of a sudden this is looking a lot shorter. So, except it wouldn't be an and, it would be an or, because it's true either way. You get a sleep in if you're on vacation, or it's not a weekday. So right now, this is almost as short as we can make it, except notice we need a return statement, and we either need to return true, false if it's a Boolean, if this return type is Boolean, or we need to return some Boolean math, true, false math, that's equal to true when it's supposed to be true and false when it's supposed to be false. But that is right here. This little bit of Boolean math right here is equal to true when we want to return true and false when we want to return false. So we can just do this in one return statement. We could just return it, and that will also work. By the way, when you're doing this, as long as it works, you're good. Just to show you we got it all. Anyway, so we went from long to short. Keep that in mind. Next question. All right, monkey trouble. We got two monkeys, A and B, and the parameters are A smile and B smile indicate if each is smiling. We're in trouble if they're both smiling or if neither of them is smiling. We got to return true if we're in trouble. So again, it's a public method accessible from any class. It must be returning something that's either true or false because its return type is Boolean. It's called monkey trouble. So if you want to use it, you use the word monkey trouble, and in brackets, you give it what information it needs to do its job. And to do its job, we need to know if monkey A is smiling, and we need to know if monkey B is smiling, and we're representing that with true or false. True being if it's smiling, false it's not. So let's do it. So same as before, slightly longer way. We'd be like, hey, if A smile is true and B smile is true, we're gonna be in trouble, right? Because if they're both smiling, we're in trouble. If they're both not smiling, we're in trouble. And then we can throw in an else if we want. If they're both not smiling, so if they're both not smiling, we're also in trouble. Any other situation, we are not in trouble. And then we can throw in else, return false. And then this will work. We could try it out. We could hit go, and notice we got, assuming I can spell, we should have them all right. There we go. So that'll work, but we can make it shorter. Again, something we don't need this else, because the only way we're possibly hitting this point is if this wasn't, if neither of those were true. Because as soon as you hit a return, the function is over. It does not continue. All right, other things we could do. We could do this. If A smile and B smile, because remember, A smile is true or false on its own, B smile is true or false on its own, so we don't really need to check that they're true or false. It's just always equal to what they are. So yeah, if A smile is true and B smile is true, this whole thing will be true. If either one is false, this whole thing will be false, just like we want. And again, we can do the same kind of thing with the not. same idea as this guy, except we want things flipped. So that'll flip the value of a smile. So if it's false, this whole thing's equal to true. And we can do the same thing for B. Less button presses. Feel free to leave it the way it was if it makes more sense to you, but you know, good to get used to the knots. And we could combine these. So we could combine them with an or. So if they're both smiling or they're both not smiling, we're good. And we don't need to add any extra brackets because ands occur before ors, which in this case is just what we want, and nots occur before both of them. So we're all good there. So we can get rid of that. This will also work. We can check it out, just see if it works. Notice we get them all. So we're doing great here. But notice we can do better because we've got if some condition, some Boolean math that's equal to true when we want to return true and false when we want to return false. We return true if it's true, and otherwise we return false. We can just return our little Boolean math thing, our little Boolean expression, true, false expression. So let's do that. Let's get rid of everything else and just return our little Boolean expression. And then that'll also work. Save us some typing. Not a terrible idea to practice your ifs, but let's be efficient too. Now, you might be like, okay, we're done, but we can do even better in this case, because if we look carefully, notice we want to return true if the states of A and B are the same. Either they're both smiling or both not smiling. And we have a operator that checks if two things are the same. Equals equals. Do that, we're done. We're in trouble if they're both the same. Bam, done. All right, that's the easiest way to do this guy. Now we're going to jump ahead here. We're going to do pause neg. This one is, for the last ones we did, we could just do one return statement. For this one, it probably won't make sense to. In this one, we've got another public. We're going to be returning something that's true or false. Keep in mind, we don't always do that. Sometimes we might want to return a number. It's called pause neg when we want to use it. This is our command being used. And it takes 3 bits of information. We need to know 3 things to do this job. For pause neg, you got number A, you've got number B, and this Boolean called negative, which kind of tells you what type of function we're doing, because it's got kind of 2 modes. If negative is false, we want to return true if one is negative and the other is positive. And if negative is true, we want to return true only if they're both negative. So we've got kind of 2 modes depending on this guy, which lends itself really well to an if statement that depends on it. So we can be like if negative, keep in mind you can have an if inside an if. So if negative, we could do another if inside there. If to check something's negative, you just got to check that it's less than 0. So we're going to say A is less than 0. I'll throw in the and here. We'll skip a thing. And B is less than 0. So if they're both negative, we're going to return true. And then we can do else, return false. So yeah, if this little negative mode thing is on, if it's true, then we want to return true only if they're both negative, if they're both less than 0. So if this negative mode is on, we've dealt with that. If they're both less than 0, we return true. Otherwise, we return false. But then we got to deal with this other mode where one of them's got to be positive and the other's got to be negative. So we could do, hey, if, let's say A is negative, A is less than 0, and B is positive, so it's got to be greater than 0. It's just positive. Yeah. B is greater than 0. Or it's the opposite. A is the positive one, it's greater than 0, and B is the negative one, it's less than 0. So if either of those is true, we want to return true. Because if one is positive and the other is negative, that's our situation where we want to return true. And otherwise, we'll return false. So that works pretty good. It's a little longer than I'd like, but we can do something about that. We can, we've got this if, the condition, we return true, otherwise we return false. Why don't we just return that condition? That'll work. So we can delete all this and just return it. And we can do the same thing here. If the negative mode is on, if it's equal to true, we can just return our condition. So that's a lot simpler, and we are almost good. This is almost as efficient as you can make it, except this is a little longer. If only I had a really efficient way to check that one number was positive and the other number was negative without checking, because I don't really care if A is the negative one or B is the positive one. I just want to know if there's at least one of them positive, the other negative. There's a really easy way to figure that out, because I happen to know that a positive number multiplied by a negative number is always less than 0. So if we multiply them together, get something less than 0, one of them's got to be positive, the other's got to be negative. Do that, we get them all, and it's as short as we can make it. Keep in mind, it doesn't always have to be super short. If you're getting them right, don't worry about it. Maybe watch this video and work on your game so you're not wasting so much time. All right, last one I want to go over is near 100. It uses something in the math library called ABS, or absolute value, which is just takes whatever number you got and forces it to be positive. It can be really, really useful for checking if the difference, like how big the difference between two numbers is, if you don't care if it's negative or positive. So for this guy, here's how we're going to do it. I'm just going to skip straight to the punchline. We're going to return, we want to check that this number they give us, keep in mind it's again a Boolean one, they give us a number and we got to tell you if it's within 10 of either 100 or within 10 of 200. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this math.abs that just takes some number and forces it to be positive. If it was negative, if it's positive, it doesn't do anything. And I'm just going to do n minus 100, or I could do 100 minus n, same thing. If that is less than or equal to 10, guaranteed n is within 10 of 100. Because let's say n was 110, within 10 of 100, although just barely, you'd have 110 minus 100, which would equal 10. Absolute value would do nothing to it because 10 is positive, and 10 is less than or equal to 10. In the other direction, if n is 90, the other extreme, that's also within 10 of 100, you'd have 90 minus 100 equals negative 10. The absolute value would take that minus 10 and force it to be positive, so now it's positive 10. And we check that that's less than or equal to 10, which it is. And so that works as well. Anything beyond that, further away than 10 from 100, will not make this true. So we want to return true if either n is within 10 of 100 or it's within 10 of 200, which hopefully you can figure out how to do. And that should get you started on these questions. Hopefully that helped.
Please like and subscribe.